everybody. Gary Budd here with Will Crudge and Brent Gaskey. We're just having a light day today. We're talking about research and what we do to prepare for our novels. And because of our guest last week, Charlie Cox, she mentioned about going down the rabbit hole. We thought it would be fun just to talk about what each of us do for research purposes for our books, our stories. How much research can you actually do for a science fiction book? Ironically, a lot. And just kind of have a bit of fun and try not to go down a rabbit hole on it. So I would love to know what Mr. Will Crudge, our author at large here with his new upcoming book coming up, I would love to know what research you did to have a dog as a team lead in your
Oh, that's just from being a dog owner, man. Dogs are pretty straightforward. The hard part is when you do a POV from the dog's perspective and you have to include the fact that that dog is going to sense things that a human isn't going to sense. So you have to tie that into the story and make it make sense.
And how did you make that happen?
That's a Google search. You know, how sensitive is a typical German Shepherd's ears? You know, how sensitive is their nose? You know, that kind of thing, just to get a general feel. But, you know, most of it is just common sense in that respect. But what was a lot trickier is I'm dealing with Marines in this coming book, and I'm a soldier. So I had to dig into Marine culture to make it make sense. More specifically, the main character, spoiler alert, he gets forced into a promotion based off of battlefield losses, and they front load him and send him to a leadership course called the Corporal's Course. So I actually had to research the actual Marine Corps' Corporal's Course and build the entire sequence of him going through training based off of realistic curriculum. You know, what do they teach there? How do they teach it? Who are the instructors? You know, how is it led? That kind of thing. And, you know, what are the phases? So I had to break that down and add that into the story. And that was quite a bit of research right there. Now,
so I guess what
battles.
Sorry,
I was just saying Battle Space Nomad is a whole different conversation because Special Forces selection, that was a lot more lengthy.
Right.
But
so I actually was going to go back to that
in a minute.
Well, I was actually going to go back because we don't want to give too much ruining, but I just love the fact that your upcoming book has a dog as a squad complete. That's amazing to me. But what I guess I'm trying to get at here, because words are hard, is when you're doing your research, Will, like, okay, let's go to the Special Forces side. You research, you talk to people, stuff like that. Where do you take the information you have, the research you've done, and then make it pliable into the future? What do you decide can be left out? How do you decide what should be kept in?
Right.
Because anybody can do AI or Google and go, hey, how does this work? How does a Special Forces team operate? And you'll get all your information. But what I think people struggle with, I know I took a bit of time to get used to it, was here's the information and the facts. Like, here's the facts, if you will. How do I make that where, one, I'm not copying this information into this, but I'm transitioning it? And what, like you said earlier, common sense, but let's face it, it's 2026 and common sense is so rare it could be a superpower. So
if common sense was so common, more people would have it.
Right. So talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old and walk me through your process on how you take some factual information and then you break it down and make it where your character, you feel that your character went through it, because he did. Like, in my mind, reading your book, Jimmy went through all that. There's no...
And he most certainly did. Because story time. So years ago, I was sitting there watching a documentary on Special Forces selection, and all of a sudden, my wife, you know, jumped out of her seat because I scared her, because I started pointing at the screen, going, teabag, teabag. She had no context. She was freaked out. And it was my buddy Ray T-Beck Tebeck. But you know, we all give each other horrible nicknames,
which
so
of course becomes teabag, right?
right. It was a natural evolution to teabag. So that was my first inclination that he was going through special forces, because you know he and I served together in our first duty station. Our first unit was the same, and so when I wanted to build a special forces narrative, I found him on social media. And at this point, he had been retired, but he actually got selected during that documentary and went through the training, eventually became a special forces instructor, actually won instructor of the year. And he retired, and still 3 years after his retirement, he still was doing special forces training. Long story short, I was like, look, I know you can't tell me everything. I know you guys are gatekeepers of the special forces community, so you can't really go into detail about your selection criteria, which they can't and they will not. I mean, this guy's retired and he's still holding true to the community. So I was like, but that's not what I want. I want your experience. What did you go through so I can imprint that on my main character? Because I can't make a futuristic special forces selection and make it make sense if I can't have a timeless experience of a soldier going through the process, if you know what I mean. Because the human experience is going to be the same regardless of what century it is. So I wanted to focus on that. And so that entire training sequence, I don't remember how long it was. It might have been 80, 90, 100 pages. But that entire training sequence, when he's going through special forces selection, was based off of Ray Tebeck's firsthand experience. What he exactly went through from his perspective.
Without telling.
Without revealing what he couldn't, but he was more than happy to reveal what he knew at the time from his perspective going through the selection process. See what I mean? And I was
still love that part where the gnome was talking to him.
And that was based on a real thing that happened.
Yeah.
The first time he ever hallucinated was on the final road march of Special Forces selection, which is basically a death march. And they don't tell you how long it is. They don't tell you how long you have to complete it. They just basically say, here's your water, here's your compass, there's the road, go. And he gave up his pace count by 30 kilometers. So he gave up tracking his pace. And
wow.
His mind was melting. You know, he was severely dehydrated, and he looks over and the Travelocity gnome is walking right next to him, just talking. And he was just like, this sumbitch is trying to get me to quit. He's like, screw that. Screw you, gnome. And he just kept on going.
I'm not saying you do magic mushrooms, but if you want to experience the same thing, just take some mushrooms and go for a walk. Do a death march, yeah, on mushrooms.
Well, your point is so, when you said, the timelessness of that, it doesn't matter if it's, your character's going through the agoge in Sparta or the Roman legionary training or, modern day SF selection. They are trying to get this. They're trying to get the same things out of those candidates, right? They're trying to figure out where their breaking points are. Are they capable of doing what they need to do? All of those things need to get done. And that's such a cool point that you brought up, that when you apply that to some future militaristic whatever, it might be a different, series of tests that make up that selection, but it's going to be the same rules apply, to the human aspect of it. So yeah, really cool research on that.
Now, and it was a lot of fun.
So saying that, Will, you've written a lot of books. When did you, because as you know, we've talked about this, I'm at that stage where I'm starting to trust my voice, trust my the reader, stuff like that. Be more show, not tell. Where did you find that for yourself when you were like, okay, you know what? I got to be less descriptive. Cause like, seriously, man, the way you write now, is you can feel the emotion, you feel what the person's going through. And maybe it's just the retired soldier in me where I could picture going through battle school with your character stories and stuff like that. Where did you pick that up and decide for when you're doing your research to, like, I'm sure you've written something and went, I'm just describing something, I haven't told them a thing, to where you actually make the reader feel what you just wrote.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Essentially what you're talking about, I call it a process called tunnel vision, putting the blinders on and becoming the main character as you write the main character. And I am very ADD or ADHD, medicated, the whole 9 yards. And I don't suffer well reading a book where it's just endless narration or they don't get to the point, or somehow the main character becomes omnipotent and things are going on around him that he's not actually experiencing himself. I was like, no, I'm gonna pretend I'm an ADHD person reading this book that can't suffer the unnecessary stuff. I want that main character to turn his head or her head, because I've written both female and male main characters, and I want the reader to only experience what that person is experiencing when they're putting their focus on something. That's the key.
Do you find that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, yeah.
I was going to ask you about. So, is that a close third person or first person view that you want to give your readers? Is that kind of what you're trying to do with that?
I want to give, because I've written in first person before. But first person and third person have their pros and cons. And in the stories that I write, typically I want to have different POVs from different people. And that's a little bit harder to do with a first person narrative because it can get confusing. So with middle sci-fi, I typically do the third person, but it's not like a third person omnipotent type thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says you have to stay first or third person. Like, it's your story. Like, if you have to jump to another person's perspective to get that perspective, I've seen it in many novels, and you do it very well, Will. Thanks. I can tell your books are third person, but at the same time, you go right to Jimmy's perspective, and then you'll go to the enemy's perspective and everything. I've if anything, with my Project Threshold series that I'm doing, I'm kind of mimicking that, because I found writing in third person a lot easier.
Yeah,
because I could get all the perspectives in. Where I found writing in first person very limiting, because you literally have to change your scene. You don't want to insult your reader, but you also don't want to confuse your reader. So it's like,
I tried first person, and I really struggled with head hopping, right? Where I'd want to be in my main character's head, and then all of a sudden I find myself writing in someone else's head, and I'm like, well, I can't do that. Like, that head hopping thing is a bad thing. It can be done correctly. I think it takes a lot of skill to do that, skill that I don't necessarily have. Where that close third person makes more sense to me, where, you know, what you're talking about is like, you can take it from this person's perspective and then show the other person's perspective. But you still have a little bit of that omnipotence enough to be third person that you can show that you can move the camera, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Like in my,
it also helps you grow your characters.
Yeah. In my Space Orc trilogy, which was more of a passion project than anything else. It was just really fun to write. I didn't expect it to actually be a commercial success, but, it still exceeded my expectations. But anyway, it was first person, and like I said, tunnel blinders, and it actually got pretty good feedback from readers. They really liked that trilogy and the style of the narration.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also, Gary, you might find it interesting that there is a character named Gary, and Gary is a space troll that guards the airlock on the ship. Yeah, and he has a club And Gary Smash.
That's okay. You may find it interesting, Will, that in my next book, there's going to be a character named Will, who's the sanitarian engineer.
Nice.
He's 3 feet tall.
Hey, somebody's got to do it.
That's true.
It's a
story, my
shitty
friend.
job. I mean,
Hey,
whenever
we
I go camping, I'm the sanitation engineer that has to clean out the black tack, which is a lot of fun.
Well, we used to
Number
joke,
one
right,
and number
the
two.
engineers
That's
go,
Mr. Will
we could go
Crudge.
from combat engineer to sanitary engineer like that.
Yep. Whether it's a bulldozer or a trash truck, I'll drive anything with wheels.
Oh, the best thing I've seen so far that's made fun of Gary is still Team America World Police when they're like smashing up the room.
Yeah.
Gary, smash, baby. Gary.
Yeah, she mows down 30 people.
So I love how my name's been turned into this. Like, I guess it's better than being a Karen, but
Hey, I was going to ask
just
you
opened
guys,
a wound.
when you guys are talking specifically about Mill SF and doing some research, Will, you were talking about writing a Marine from an Army perspective. Is there something about that? Do Army guys want to read about Marines? Do Navy guys want to read about Air Force? Is there something where you want to read another branch's experience, I guess?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it comes down to personal preference. The Nomad series, I wanted it to be a soldier story, but still be genre-wise classified as Space Marine. Because I was doing the math in my head. I'm like, there are more soldiers than there are Marines, and that demographic is probably reflected in the readership. So I wanted to do an Army story because most of them out there are Marine stories. But then, when it came to First Salvo, I made a very conscious decision to, if I'm going to write about Marines, I'm going to lean into the Space Marine genre and get it right.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like for me, Marines have always been the ones that serve on ships. It's like, I'm sorry to say this, but to me, Marines isn't just an American Marine Corps thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I do take a lot of what the Marine Corps has established to become a pretty dominant fighting force. Absolutely. But I don't want to make it, no crayons were lost in the writing of this story, like, I mean, I don't want to make it very American specific, but I don't want to not make it where people won't recognize it. I want to just make it where, like, I think for myself, when I write military science fiction now, even though I'm Canadian, I still write with the mindset that America is the world hyperpower, and that if we do survive, we're either going to be speaking 3 languages: English, Chinese, or Arabic. There's, you know what I mean? And the leader of the English side would be America.
And French,
and
of
so,
course.
Well, no, because there's like...
Do baguette, s'il vous plaît?
Well, their new tanks that are coming out have 5 gears, 1 forward, 4 reverse. But
got me a French battle rifle to sell you. Drop once, never fired.
But
why do the streets of Paris have so many trees?
Well, the Nazis
Germans don't like to march in the shade.
Shit.
So I'm just ripping on the French, which is totally uncalled for. So I apologize to any viewers that are French.
Gary, I love
Will's defense. In Will's defense, he did vacation with some French Canadians recently, so he might be a little jaded.
Sure did. Sure did. And I noticed the difference between U.S. and Canadians is Americans, if they see Canadian geese crossing the street, they're very patient and they let them cross. And I witnessed a French Canadian just walk right through them, bulldozing, just swinging his arm like, get, go on, get. Of course he was spitting out something French, but that was the English equivalent. And
you couldn't even do a Francais accident.
I was just dying laughing because these Americans are like, oh, Canadian geese, let's let them pass. And the Canadians are just like, oh, you pesky son. So
anyway, what you're saying is you guys are nicer to our geese than to us. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just put Just going to put that in the pocket. All right.
Your geese are the best geese.
Yeah.
Canadians are nasty, but the geese are fantastic.
We love the geese. Oh no, Gary, I was going to say that like Marco Close, I think I'm pronouncing his name right. Close. In his Iridium series, brought in a lot of different. He had like a color sergeant, and he had some different ranks that were taken from like a German military. Speaking back to your idea
And
of
British.
having. Yeah, and British of having ranks outside of the American military, or having like organizational structure outside the American military. And as an American, I loved reading that because it brought a different flavor to what was being presented. So the idea of a British Marine or a Canadian Marine is different than the American side. So I think that's cool to be able to do that research and pull that in, where it's like it's maybe not always being taken from one perspective.
Yeah,
See,
I had
one
a
thing I like to
character that
do-
was
sorry.
Marine, a Royal Marine Commando, and he was a color sergeant,
Yeah,
and his
That's
name was
awesome.
Basil.
Basil.
You just want to use the name Basil. But so what I like to do is I prefer not to have, like in my futures, America doesn't exist, Canada doesn't. The world's gone through hell and has come out the other side. And, the assumption is, we won. But I don't like to use the term America or Canada. Like I'll use it in historical terms, but what is now is not there. And I know that might rub some people the wrong way, but it's not intended to rub anybody the wrong way. I've tried to be inclusive by welcoming other people into American military science fiction. That's what I'm trying to bring.
I do
Diversity
it a
is our
little.
strength.
I do it a little less depressing. I in one of my universes.
You have more faith in humanity than I do, I guess.
I know you're just like, man, we humans are stupid.
We're not going to make it. Like,
I created a world where the governments of Earth, once commercial FTL became viable, the nations of Earth got together, raising resources or whatever, to create stellar nations, and that's where in Battlespace Nomad the SNA comes from, stellar nations of the former Americas, and that composes the U.S., Canada, and all the Latin American countries, plus the Caribbeans, and seemingly inexplicably the Maori culture from New Zealand. And there's a whole backstory about that I didn't include in the trilogy
The States of
or
Monroe.
in any of the series. But you're familiar with the Maori culture. They're the
Yeah.
Polynesian natives of New Zealand, so they're part of the SNA as a protectorate.
That's cool.
And they have,
and it's so much fun to do that. And kudos to you for being able to do that. I felt like, because I wanted to try and do something not like yours at all. It'd be, but I mean, I didn't want to be too Star Trek. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be too.
But you didn't want to be idealistic in the sense where they're like, oh, we have no currency.
I wanted to be more like, right now I live in a world where people
there's
don't
a
know how to
problem.
turn
To the conference
right on a
room
green
because
light.
I can't be bothered to be a captain.
No, it's more people can't turn on a green light. And I figure if that's the case, we're at a 2026 where we're supposed to have flying cars.
Yes.
Not looking good. Like,
Well, yeah, Gary still looks both ways when turning on a one-way street.
I look 3 times, man, because time passed from the other look.
So do you guys find that you're informed, your decisions, like your decision to include like Polynesia as part of the Americas, that's an odd thing, right? That doesn't necessarily fit, but that's the way the world works. There's always some little fiddly bit that's out there that didn't quite, it doesn't really make sense. And it seems to me like the more I'm informed about just humans and our culture and the way that we do things, the more you find that things are tribal. I know, it's like, whoa,
when did you land,
it's just
Brent?
kind of well, I got here 10 minutes ago. It's one of those epiphanies that just happens where you're like, people are tribal, and they're going to be tribal 1,000 years from now. People are going to be tribal. And the idea of this perfect Star Trek reality where, we all get our 100,000 acre vineyard and we get to grow grapes like, Jean-Luc Picard, and we get to do whatever. That's not the reality. The reality is there's still going to be,
It did not end well.
There's still going to be slums. There's still going to be, the haves and the have-nots, and that's just the way that things are going to be. And so, I like when I wrote Outland Stars, it's very much that way, where you have the colonies and then you have the established, basically Europe. And I think it's those kind of things that I think probably your guys, 30 years of being in the military probably informed you on a lot of that, where you show up into a third world shithole and you're like, oh, this is going to be 1,000 years from now. Afghanistan is going to look exactly like Afghanistan looks at this moment, right? We're all going to be living in the same mud huts and scratching out a living. So I'm guessing, is that kind of the reality of what you guys find?
Well, for me, I kind of used our current society, right? Like, I'm not going political, but to go political to explain it, I look at what your current government's doing against Iran, and I see a lot of the Democrat side going, oh, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And then I saw Bill Burr do a quote, and he goes, you don't feel that's enough justification for going in? And the guy's like, no, I absolutely do not. And he goes, well, that's what Obama said about going into Libya. And so I use that mindset of when I write, knowing that it doesn't matter, like you said, tribalism. One side could be doing the 100% right. The other side's going to disagree. Like one side's going to say, hey, if you breathe in 3 deep breaths at this altitude, at this time of day, you will never get cancer. Nobody's going to go do it from the other side. You know what I mean? Because they're like, I'm not going to follow that. So I feel that's why I kind of always destroy the world first, and then whatever comes out is from that, because I also find it a bit of a headache to try and get into the heads of all this stuff right now, because we're so polarized as a nation. Like social media, everything has made us so confrontational, where we'll say things to each other that we'd never say to each other's face, at least not without getting a punch in the face. You know what I mean? So we've just become so polarized, so divided, so everything. I want to hopefully give people a break from that. And I think that's why I kind of went the route I went.
I mean, it doesn't matter your setting. It doesn't matter your genre. It doesn't matter your style of writing. If you have characters, then then the one thing that's universal is you have to realize that humans are going to be human. And human nature is the chaos of it, and the unpredictableness of it is in itself predictable when you're trying to create and develop characters and a story that's human-centered. Is you got to lean into the chaos, and believe it or not, it's almost like a comfort zone to do that, because, like, wait a minute, I'm human. What kind of ignorant thoughts would pop in my head? What kind of angry thoughts would pop in my head? What drives this character? Are they a sociopath? Once again, put on the blinders and become the character and apply that human thing. And just to also go back to the Maori culture, the reason why they split off is because the New Zealanders and the Australians wanted them to be more homogenous into their stellar culture, and they wanted to break away to preserve their tribal culture. But and they found refuge as a protectorate under the SNA. So they're
nice.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where they're not a colony, but they're a territory per se.
So getting back on topic then to the research side of the house, what made you decide to choose them and do that? Because that's a very original idea that most people wouldn't even think of. And yet you did it. Was it something you were kind of playing with? What brought that group specifically out of all your research for your books to be in that situation?
I wanted to capture in it. That was my Blood and Metal universe that established the universe for my Nomad series. And I wanted it to be factions that the modern person could identify with. So there's actually the Greater British Empire in the which is the British element, and they're a multi-system colonial thing, and I have the Japanese Empire, the same deal. And I also threw a twist in there politically, like nowadays the British people, their monarch is really a figurehead, head of state, with limited executive power. The king still has a lot more than what he wields, but he holds restraint in order to preserve the monarchy, basically, because he doesn't want to become tyrannical. But he has more power than what he lets on. In this universe, the king is their true head of state, and Parliament is serves at the king's pleasure.
Advisory.
Right. They still pass laws and everything, but the king has the final say on everything.
Which makes total sense, yeah.
And the reason why I justified that was because a stellar nation is more complicated to govern, and you need a stronger head of state. And they were having a hard time with elected officials under the parliamentary system, which is designed. Parliamentary system is fine if you have a small country, but when you scale it up, it's not so good.
Yeah, I used a triumvirate in Outland Stars. So I used basically 3 heads of state that non-elected, serve for life, hereditary, and those 3 families are the ones that are kind of the head of state. With the idea being that if you have one, they can become tyrannical pretty easily. It takes longer with 3, and that was kind of the idea there. And I don't know how well I pulled that off. I enjoyed writing that portion of it, and I like the fact that they will, ultimately they become corrupt as well. But it's taken a longer period of time than it did, with just the one.
That's human nature as well, right? Absolute power corrupts absolute. It's one of my favorite quotes. And like Canada, like we're a parliament. So, and what we're noticing is our population's growing. Obviously, we're second largest country in the world, but we have like 40 million people. We're very small. But what's happening is Ontario and Quebec pretty much elect the Prime Minister of Canada, which obviously leads exclusion from the rest of the provinces. So when our mighty Justin Trudeau ran and won, he said he would get rid of the first past the post, and then decided, well, no, if we do that, there may never be a Liberal government again. So didn't do that. So right now, and I'm sure people will be upset by me saying this because everybody has their opinions, but the amount of representation that Canadians have is not equal representation from coast to coast. Especially with like you guys, have very small states and huge states, right? We have huge provinces and small provinces. So what is the right form of government? Now, I see everybody's leaning towards social democracy, which is cute because everybody thinks they're just going to tax the rich and the rich would pay the taxes and not move their wealth somewhere else. But it's going to be
remember, kids, you can vote your way into communism, but you have to shoot your way out.
That is so true.
That is a true story. And if you think that having everything funded by the government is fun, then do some research on Canada, because we have free healthcare, but you could wait 18 hours to see a doctor. Yes, I won't go bankrupt if I get cancer, but not all the cancer treatment is covered. You know what I mean? Yeah. People are trying to picture, if the government does this and we just increase taxes, that's great. But who are the ones asking you to increase the taxes? I can tell you right now, it's not the working class.
Back on topic now.
This just goes to show how ran more efficiently than the private country. But this just goes to, right?
And this just goes to show, though, like if you look at our current world, all the different states that we're in around the planet, like we have some parts of our planet that are 1920 or 19 or 40, the 1400s, like Afghanistan, right? Stuff like that. So there's a lot, like go back to your point, Will, there's so much meat in our current society, worldwide society to dig from and to also use in a futuristic, because how would that look futuristically? Do I think in the 27th century, Afghanistan still looks like Afghanistan? Probably pretty much. If that level of religious extremism is allowed to continue governing countries, then yeah, there's not going to be a change.
So, Gary, your current thing you're working on, you're basically using Titans and gods as the background for your different groups. How different is that than I feel like much of my writing is informed by currently politically what's going on. And it's the same thing that happened. If you go back to look at the 1950s, a lot of, Highlines ideas, or in the 70s, you look at like Planet of the Apes, completely informed by what was going on politically at the time, right? It was a big social upheaval. And so, basically they were using humans as the stand-ins for, all of the minority groups and all that kind of stuff. Same thing, I think, with everybody else's writing. How does it work when you're going back 1,000 years, 2,000 years and using gods from that time period? And how does that change your research versus just pulling something out of the newspaper today?
Well, the newspapers today depress me. So
if newspapers exist, right? That's the
right.
thing.
I think a part of me has always wanted all this stuff to be real. Do you know what I mean? Like, how cool would it have been Zeus on the top of Mount Olympus and, Hercules and all these fantastic, wonderful stories. So what's the difference between magic and technology, right? Were the Titans and Zeus gods, or were they just super advanced beings? So how do you take a earthbound myth and turn it into a galactic myth or a galactic reality?
I was going to say that the difference is magic doesn't have tech support.
Well, depending on how, I don't know. There's some times in Harry Potter, the wands didn't work properly. They had to go to school. No, but you know what I mean,
turning
right?
the wand off and on again.
So right? You're not, you accidentally use somebody else's wand. You do not have rights to use this wand.
This wand needs to have its bios flashed.
Right? So I basically just wanted to have a fantastic universe, but with reality into it. You know what I mean? So are the Titans and Zeus gods?
Well, that's a great point, Gary. You just said, but with reality, because you got to ground your story in reality to make let's face it, your readers are not going to sit there. Your readers are not stupid. They're not going to believe that. They're not going to believe the fiction, but they want to believe, like you said. So they're going to get into the moment if you can tell them a good story. But
Exactly.
The best way to do that in fiction is to make it relatable in ways that they can understand and experience it. And you have to do it in a way that's grounded.
Exactly. And here the thing I'm playing with too is, so say I have the Titans, right? And they're leading the whole gambit. Well, they're not on every ship. It's actually a small group of Titans in the myth, right? And they're running an empire, say. So those people actually out in the ships and running stuff isn't them. It's kind of like, in a way, Star Wars, right? Palpatine's the emperor, but he's not out everywhere. Vader gets sent out to do some things, but for the majority, it's just trusted individuals with ridiculously large amounts of war machine power pushing their will on the universe. Right. So the reality is, if the Titans and Zeus are really gods, well, then the story ends in chapter 6 when they just crush everybody on the ship's crew's minds with the thought. That's where science and magic come in, right? Like they are immortal, but not naturally immortal. They're immortal through science and genetic manipulation and all this and that. Like, eventually, how I feel we will be.
About their true origins, like are they truly gods, or are they just enhanced beings that have the godlike
what
powers?
I'm trying to do with each book is, so how do I have this group real in this universe, but they were a myth here, right? Well, the reality is, maybe this race here did come to Earth for a matter of time to say, hey, let's see what we can do with it. And then it was like, either we're too much trouble than we're worth, or this isn't what we're looking for, or they just got bored and left. Like, if you look at the timeline when if they came to Earth, we didn't have much going on, like we were still using swords, very general.
Iron Age.
Sticks together. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just kind of moved on. Because if you actually study Greek mythology, and one thing I learned is no one really knows what happened to Zeus. You know what I mean? There's tons of stories about it, but realistically, it just ends. There's no real. So my mind was, okay, this was a race of beings that came. Well, what would happen if this happened? And that's how come the Titans then became the dominant, because I'm looking at Zeus loses the war against his father, and the Titans end up taking part of what Zeus's mindset was and going, hey, we could use this to our advantage. So Zeus is still stuck on Earth on his Mount Olympus, but it's a prison for him. And literally his job is to make sure he's pumping out humans to the Imperium to be soldiers. That's humanity's job in this universe. Again, not an original trope, but we are a warlike species, so why not hold on to that?
No, I like it. Lean into it.
Yeah. So, I mean, just like in the first book, Dajjal, who's the AI, who's actually a real being, his race was the ones who were first sentient and destroyed the universe. You know what I mean? So that's the fun part about this is I can pretty much say anything I want by using our universe and say, how do we know? Like, you know, what would have happened? Like, look at Rick Partlow. He likes to use dinosaurs, you know, that they advanced and then moved on, and how many different societies and stuff like that. What happens if the asteroid never hit Earth? You know what I mean? What would that universe look like?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what I mean? There's so many ways you can play with it, but keeping the crew of the original ship that's going there human, you know.
Triceratops romance is what happens if the asteroid never hits.
Yeah, maybe my birds would be a little smarter.
No one to shut up. Or maybe they are smarter than we think, and they're like, no, they'll wait till after you press stop and then they'll stop.
Well, I mean, it was very difficult to try to explain to my 6-year-old son that birds are actually dinosaurs because, you know, when I was growing up, the only thing you heard was, oh, they're completely extinct. Birds are just their own thing. Like, wait a minute, that doesn't compute.
No.
How come our parakeet has a T-Rex feet? You know, come on, man.
Right. And that's the whole fun part about writing science fiction that I love, is especially with this series that I'm writing, is I can use any part of our history. I won't use Egypt because I love Stargate and I feel the Egyptian gods have been used quite a bit for space. But I thought Greek mythology, I love Greek mythology. Like, I get excited reading Greek stories. I don't know. I'm just a big kid at heart, right? Like all of us. And I was like, well, what if this was real? And what if Zeus lost? And how would this universe look? You know? And, you know, like everybody loves to say there's no God with no proof. You know what I mean? Today, even, right? Like, we have billions of people on this planet who are God-fearing people, whether it's God or Allah or whatever. How do we know? We don't. So how can we have fun with it? Let's open our minds. Let's explore it. Let's show how humanity would deal with that kind of a mindset. And I think that's what science fiction is. Throw that military spin into it. So you got some fun space battles and some cool human tragedy working with each other. And I think you have a great potential for a story. The trick is to research it properly and write it properly to ensure, again, like you said, Will, people want to read it and want to keep reading it going, oh, okay. So they're not omnipotent. They're not all seeing, all powerful. They have their limitations. You know, we just assume from Greek mythology, like Zeus could throw lightning bolts. Well, or was it just a really powerful weapon that he used on people who questioned him? You know what I mean? We also kind of have Zeus was the good guy, but he's always portrayed as kind of a not, you know? So
he was portrayed as kind of a scoundrel.
Yeah. Like, he would dead women without their permission. So that's kind of a crime.
Underhanded.
Yeah. So it did a little bit of trickery. So I don't want to make Zeus necessarily a hero either. You know what I mean? Basically, we're in a position, we have to do some stuff so we can get out of this position. You know what I mean?
But you have to apply those limitations to godlike people if you want to turn them into readable characters.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about humanity being so warlike. Like, look how much we've advanced because of our wars. You know, like, if it wasn't like World War II gave us the atom, right? Like, we split the atom because of World War II. Anytime there's a conflict, we rise.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Because humanity was crushed at such an earlier point in its existence in this universe, I feel when the Cluza shows up with its crew and its formidable weapon systems, because it's literally a product of war and domination in its universe, it throws the Titans off because they've never had all their adversaries are now, they don't really have adversaries, right? So the complacency on their side and the Titans who are gods not knowing how to actually fight this enemy brings that human factor to it and shows these guys aren't gods. They're just old beings who have better technology and are ruling us. You know what I mean? Yes, it's been done, but not from this angle. And isn't it what we're supposed to do is just bring new, interesting, fun ideas and angles to people?
Sure. Absolutely.
So I'm having fun with the research. I believe with this, I don't think I've done as much research in any book as I have in this book too, because trying to turn an Earth-based mythology into a galaxy-based empire, if you think that's easy, then you are better than me. You know?
No.
So, you have a question, Will?
No, I'm just saying that doesn't sound easy at all.
So I was wondering, at what point did you guys, and I've had this happen to me a couple times, where I have gotten into something and I thought I did enough research, and I get to a point where I am using way more hand wavium than I am actual research that I used. Have you guys found yourself in that point where you're typing away and you're halfway through the chapter and you're like, I got to go back and look at this again, and I have to do some deeper dive into what I was doing. Talk about that a little bit and how you do that.
Funny enough with that, I love that term hand wavium. That should be trademarked. That's brilliant. I actually did that for fold space, where space was literally folded on top of itself, because I'm not smart enough mathematically to figure out what else to do. And I thought, well, I use slip space as a means of travel. There was already faster light, but that's not, so I have all this stuff. So how do I hide something? Like, how do I make sense that this fleet has been hidden and not rusting out or untouched by time, right? So I literally did some hand wavium and made up fold space. And I think sometimes that's what makes science fiction fun is, you're only limited to the technology that you're explaining that you have.
Yeah. I made a sword made out of light, and it stops at this certain distance, and it's good job, George. But well done with that. I never would have thought of that, but it's a cool idea, and now lightsabers are a thing. So
and he took that from the samurai.
Yeah.
So I think everything comes from something, right? Like everybody goes, oh well, Star Trek and or Gene Roddenberry and George Lucas ruined science fiction because everything's based on them. Well, no, they took their stuff based off other stuff, right? Like the bridge of the Enterprise is the bridge of a normal U.S. naval vessel. That's what he wrote from. You know what I mean? So I think there comes a point where a lot of authors tend to be, and I'm sure will have his 2 cents on this, too factual. Like holding on too much of what they know to be right and unwilling to let go of, or not sure. I think that might be the best way to say it, unsure of what to let go of to go into the science fiction realm. Like everybody calls like Project Hail Mary hard science fiction. Because there was a couple of accurate things, but at the end of the day, there's nothing accurate, hard science fiction about that. It's just I think hard science fiction today means closer to our timeline than where most of us write further into our timeline.
Well, the thing is about, I'm sorry, we need to double back to, what were we just talking about before you started talking about that? I can't remember. What was it?
Where's the point where we go from real to science fiction, that part? Or about how amazing I am and you want to be like me?
No, well, I mean, I am enjoying your book currently. I am listening to it, but
that's high praise. Thank you.
But no, I got a bad review. Not a bad review. It was still a 4-star, I think, but he didn't give me a 5-star because he said too much information in one of my books. It was Project Nemesis. And, looking back on it, I was like, I did front load a whole lot of hard science in there that probably shouldn't have been in there, or I could have truncated it down to just the key points. But I wanted to establish that I wasn't an idiot and I understood some basic science, because I wanted to have cannons on battleships in space. But as we know, cannons get super hot when you fire them, and space is, believe it or not, even though it's a cold place, it's a bad place to cool things because there's no atmosphere for the heat to transfer into. So heat dissipates very slowly in space. So how do we do that? And then I came up with this elaborate, nanotechnology, micro channels of stuff through the barrels. So that way you could blast compressed argon through all the channels of the gun barrels, and it would blast out into space carrying the heat with it. And I think I over-explained it and turned off a guy. So that's so going from real science or hand wavium to science fiction, or science fiction to transition to hand wavium. If you are confident with the science, just roll with it. But the hand wavium, you got to root it in some kind of limitation to make it make sense. I think that was the point I was trying to say. Like, I don't go into detail on how my FTL drive works, but I will bring up what its limitations are, because the reader has to know that to make the story make sense. If you don't put limitations on your FTL drive, then you're not creating enough problems for your narrative. You're solving too many solutions.
No, exactly.
But at the same time, I don't want to go on a tangent and have to explain the science when there's a story to be told.
I personally would love the fact of you putting in how your guns work, right? I mean, that to me, that's one of the reasons I read science fiction, is because I want to know how that next level of technology works, right? And I remember as a kid watching Star Wars and being like, how's a lightsaber work? Like, how do these blasters that they use, is it energy? Is it plasma? Is it like what is coming out of the end of these things? I understand it's like, it looks cool on camera, and that's as far as they took it. But I didn't know how that worked. And those were the questions that went through my mind as a kid. So when I read science fiction, I want those intimate details of the inner workings of how something works. And so I'm the opposite of the guy that wrote the review, right? And those you just can't please your audience all the time. You got to figure out kind of where your lane is and go with it.
But at the same time, I think, and maybe you might agree or disagree with me, Will, would have that been a better show don't tell on how they work, instead of just being descriptive on it? Because like I've already said, I started off as a very descriptive writer, but instead of like trying to describe them all, somebody going, man, I'm amazed these things keep going. Like, because argon's such an old thing, right? Like,
that's why I specifically had it to where it was a character interaction explaining how the technology works, instead of the narrator doing it.
That person was just being picky.
You want, because
that's how you want to have it.
I try to unravel the world building through the eyes of the characters as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the narrator saying, oh, well, it's this government is doing this, blah, blah, blah. No, working into a conversation between two characters and world build that way. Let the characters tell the story.
I read Hammer Slammers. Go ahead, Gray.
Oh, no, go ahead, man. I was just agreeing with Will. Like, it's a part that every author kind of struggles with, is trusting your voice, trusting your audience, and just having those conversations in your book instead of feeling the need to describe everything so your reader is following along. I feel that being too descriptive myself, I can't help but wonder how many potential readers that I lose because of that, And again, we're always self-critical of our own work, and that's why we want to get better, and that's why keep writing. Now here I'm starting my 5th book, and my research is even more. I'm focusing more on character interaction, world building, because I'm trusting everything that I'm doing. I'm trusting my process. I'm trusting my readers, potential readers. And then I also am very lucky to have you two to bounce off ideas, right? So it's a fun little place to be.
Yeah. I was going to say, years ago, David Drake, if I'm remembering this right, in one of the Hammer Slammers books, and it might have been the original Hammer Slammers, at the beginning of every chapter was like a 2-page description of how his rifles worked, how his tanks worked, the history of why they had flying tanks, or all these things. And I thought it was a super cool way to do it, because if you're into that, you read it, and if you don't, you skip past a couple of pages and you start the chapter, and you don't have to. That that information is great background, but it informs what's going on in the chapter, but it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to read it to get everything out of the chapter that you need. And I thought that was kind of a unique way to do that. And I'd never really seen it done in any other book since then.
That's cool. Do you have a photographic memory, Brent? Like, just curious.
I did. And I think I ran out of film about 1997 or something like that. So it was, anything pre turn of the century, I can remember pretty well.
I'm always amazed how you pull out. Like, I'm like, oh, I was reading this book and it was so great. And there was this character and he was doing stuff. And that, like, but you're like, oh, I was reading Hammer Slammers, page 195. I believe it was by this guy. And the character was wearing a muscle shirt with 3 tattoos. And I'm like, Jesus.
He only had 2 tattoos and his name was Joachim. So, yeah, no, the eidetic memory is there are certain things that I can absolutely remember. And there's other stuff that just is like, names. I am horrible with names. I'm like, you can introduce yourself to me 3 times and I'm still going to be like, what was your name again? I'm married to you. What was your name? Oh, Shauna. Okay. That's my wife. Okay.
That's why we have our names on here for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Much appreciated.
For you, the world, man. Not this one, but
yeah,
maybe Uranus or something.
Well, what else you guys got? Anything else we need to cover today? Are there other stuff? We got Will's books coming out. Did it already come out?
Tuesday.
Or was it
week today?
No. It comes out on the 18th, 1 week from the day of this recording. Of course,
okay.
The audience will see this on Friday, but by the time this comes out, it'll be the following Tuesday. It'll come out. So yeah.
Well, the minute
and the Audible is already up for pre-order.
Yep. The minute you get to this point, just go to Audible or go to Amazon or wherever you buy your books and get your book. Because I got mine in pre-order. I'm very much looking forward to checking it out. So
yeah, it's awesome to have to watch you guys like stuff just continually getting pumped out, and mine will get there eventually. I'm in the middle of book 3 right now, so it's going a little bit slower than I would choose, but it is what it is.
Well, let's be fair, Brent. You've also taken a lot of this on. I want to make sure we let everybody know that Brent does everything on this. Me and Will are just the pretty faces. That's it. It's Brent who does all the editing. He does the publishing. It's all him. So the fact that he's writing and doing this as well, I tip my hat to you, sir, because I know I couldn't do what you're doing. So much appreciate you for doing that.
Yeah. I love doing it.
The most I did was an AI video.
Which is going to be attached to the front of this. So you guys will get to see that. It's just super fun and way cool. So
it just shows how serious we take ourselves.
Yeah, we're doing this for fun, and we're doing it basically because we had a lot of guys help us along the way, and we kind of want to return the favor. And it's just a really cool opportunity for us to kind of be a part of the community, and for you guys to get to see some voices besides the 3 of us yakking away at you all the time, like having Charlie on, or having we've got a couple other people lined up to be on the podcast, and just to get a look into some of the new stuff that's happening in the world of science fiction and just basically writing in general. So yeah, fun stuff.
I think it's time for Will's dirty tip, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've already given you the bonus tip about writing with blinders on, so that'll be the bonus tip.
Next week he'll be wearing the blinders so you can see
in a GIMP suit. But anyway, tip is to write 15 minutes a day, even if it's an off day for you. Keep up with your routine. Write 15 minutes a day. Sit on the toilet. Stay up 15 minutes later. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. You'll be surprised how much that story sticks in your head. So on those busy days, you can keep up with it.
Yes.
And it establishes a long-term habit. And if you can establish even a small writing section per day, like every day, I mean, granted, life happens. There's going to be times family stuff comes up, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about a typical day that doesn't have a damn emergency attached to it. Set aside some time to write every single day, because you'll stay in the story and you will be shocked how your cumulative effort will progress.
Yeah. Even putting, you put 200 words down on paper a day, and all of a sudden you're 1,000 words for the week. That's a significant progress.
And just remember,
That's
I have
right.
to add on to that is you can write and you can write. They're not always going to be good words. They may not even make it into your story, but you got to get those words out and on paper. It's literally the trick of the trade. Put the words on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. So next few weeks we're going to be covering. I want to cover the Decal software that we've been looking at, and we got some copies of that to kind of look over. And I know I've been enjoying it and actually liking some of the things that are happening there. I know Gary's using it, and I think we'll try it out. So we'll bring that to you in the next week or two. And we got some new upcoming guests in the next couple of weeks as well. So thank you guys for being here. And we very much appreciate you sticking around to the end, and hope to see you again next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.